The first time I realized one of my friends might actually be a monster was the night after Roxy disappeared. My name's Lena, I'm 21, and I go to Riverside University in Ohio. For 3 years, there were 6 of us, inseparable. Study groups, midnight drives, karaoke nights, spring break plans. We were a family. Or at least, I thought we were. But then Roxy, our spark, our glue, vanished. It was a Sunday night in March. She'd left the dorms around 8:15 p.m. for bubble tea, wearing her favorite purple hoodie, the one with Ohio State Fair 2021 peeling across the front. She texted the group chat "BRB craving mango milk tea," and that was the last thing we ever heard from her. 3 days later, the police opened a missing persons case. It made no sense. Literally the night before, we'd been crammed into a booth at Murphy's karaoke bar, Roxy butchering a Britney Spears song so badly the waiter had to cover his ears. We laughed until we cried. We'd even been planning our April beach trip in the group chat later that same night. There was no warning. No goodbye. Nothing. Without her, the group chat went silent. Instead of our chaotic banter, it turned into half-hearted TikTok links no one replied to. Everyone retreated to their rooms. The air felt heavier. Like her absence had sucked the life out of all of us. At first, we tried to reconnect, check in on each other, share flyers, plan searches. But there was one person who made that impossible, Connor. Connor was the last one with her. They'd gone to get bubble tea together that night. Every time we tried to talk about it, he'd shut down completely. I already told the cops everything, he'd mutter. Then he'd either change the subject or leave the room. It never sat right with me. And then, out of nowhere, Connor started ghosting us. No group hangs. No replies. His phone? Dead silent. But his Instagram? That told a very different story. Parties. Shots lined up at beer pong tables. Photos with new people we didn't even know. Spring break trips with strangers. He'd ignore our texts for days, then post a picture of himself half drunk on a beach. At first, everyone excused it. Nicole, my roommate and Rox's best friend since freshman year, said maybe he was hurting the most. And maybe she was right. Because that karaoke night, Connor had confessed his feelings for Roxy again. For the 10th time. Right there in front of all of us, slurring out, "Roxy, I love you. I've always loved you." She gave him the same gentle rejection she always did, "You know I love you, just not like that." He laughed it off and ordered another round, but we all saw how his face cracked. How his hands trembled as he raised the glass. Connor had loved her in a way that wasn't healthy. And now, with her gone, I couldn't shake the thought, maybe it wasn't just heartbreak. Maybe it was something worse. Because while Connor ignored almost everything we said, there was one subject that made him respond instantly, searching for Roxy. We'd bring up organizing a search party, suddenly he'd appear in the chat, "You're wasting your time. She doesn't want to be found." Nicole shared a flyer once, Connor replied within seconds, "This is obsessive. Just let her go." And when Roxy's parents came to campus begging to meet her friends, Connor was too sick to show up. Weeks passed. And then one night, at a random frat party, I ran into him. He was stumbling drunk, reeking of vodka, and when he spotted me, his whole face lit up in this twisted way. He grabbed my shoulder and leaned in so close his spit hit my cheek. "You know what's funny?" he slurred. "Everyone thinks she's so perfect. But perfect people don't just disappear." Then he smiled. Maybe she finally went somewhere she actually wanted to be. The way he said it, it wasn't random. It wasn't drunken nonsense. It was like he knew exactly where Roxy was. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The next morning, I told the others. Nicole, Richard, and Jade all gathered in the library while I explained what he'd said, how he'd looked at me. But instead of shock, all I got were excuses. "He's depressed," Nicole said softly. People say weird things when they're grieving. Yeah, Richard agreed. You know how much he loved her. He's probably just spiraling. But then Nicole added something that made my stomach twist. Even if he's pushing us away, we can't just leave him alone like this. That's what real friends do. They show up. So that Saturday afternoon, we did. We drove across town to Connor's off-campus apartment. He looked startled when he opened the door, pale, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in weeks. We told him we were worried, that we just wanted to make sure he was okay. But the whole time, he kept trying to push us out. I'm fine. Seriously. Just tired. I need to lie down. And then we heard it. A dull, heavy thud. From beneath the floor. Connor froze. His face drained white. Richard asked, "What was that?" Connor stammered. "Neighbor moving furniture. Walls are thin." But Connor lived on the ground floor. The only thing below him was the basement. He started shoving us toward the door, panic bleeding through his calm facade. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop even harder. 2 sets of dishes in the sink. 2 glasses on the counter. 2 jackets hanging on the hook by the door. But Connor lived alone. We left his house that afternoon, everyone else reassured that he was just grieving. But me? I couldn't shake it. That sound. Those dishes. The panic in his eyes. Something was very, very wrong. And I was the only one who saw it. But that wasn't the worst of it, not even close. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that thud from Connor's basement. Saw those 2 dirty glasses. His pale, panicked face. By 3 in the morning, I gave up pretending to rest. I grabbed my keys, threw on a hoodie, and drove back across town to his apartment. I parked across the street with my headlights off and just watched. His lights were still on. I could see him pacing back and forth through his living room window, phone pressed to his ear. He kept gesturing, like he was arguing with someone. Then suddenly, he disappeared from view. A few minutes later, he came back into frame, lugging grocery bags inside. CVS bags. At 3:30 in the morning. Who makes a pharmacy run in the middle of the night? I stayed parked until the sun came up. My legs cramped. My eyes burned. But I didn't leave. And then, just after 6, the front door opened. Connor stepped outside holding a big black garbage bag. He kept glancing over his shoulder, like a kid sneaking out after curfew. His whole body was tense. He hurried across the lot and shoved the bag into the dumpster, slamming the lid before sprinting back to his apartment. I waited a minute. Then another. And then I got out. The dumpster smelled like death itself, but when I pushed the bag open, my stomach nearly collapsed in on itself. On top were CVS receipts. Bandages. Antiseptic. Women's vitamins. Even Plan B. And buried underneath, I'll never forget this as long as I live, Roxy's purple hoodie. The same Ohio State Fair hoodie she wore the night she disappeared. Only now, it was shredded. Sleeves ripped like they'd been used to tie something down. Dark, crusted stains blotched across the fabric. Blood. I fumbled my phone out of my pocket, hands trembling so badly I could barely hit the camera button. I snapped photo after photo, whispering to myself, "It's real. It's real. I'm not crazy." That's when I heard it. A door creaking open above me. Connor's door. I froze, phone still in my hand, dumpster lid half raised. His footsteps echoed down the metal stairs. Closer. Louder. I slammed the lid shut and pretended to dig around like I was recycling bottles. Early start, who? His voice made my whole body jolt. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, hands in his pockets, face too calm. But his eyes were ice. I forced a shaky laugh. Yeah. Dropped my wallet last night. Thought maybe it fell out by my car. He stepped between me and my car, blocking the path. 6 a.m. wallet hunt? That's dedication. I tried to act casual, but my heart was thundering. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Nicole, "Where are you?" Connor tilted his head. "Funny, Richard just called me. Said you've been stalking me. You should be careful, Lena. That kind of thing looks bad." He reached for my arm. His hand clamped down too tight. That's when I saw them, fresh scratches across his knuckles, red and raw. I yanked my arm back and bolted for my car. But when I turned the corner, my heart dropped into my stomach. Richard's Honda was pulling into the lot. He jumped out, concern written all over his face. But the concern wasn't for me. It was for Connor. "Hey, you okay, man?" he asked, shooting me a quick glance like I was the problem. Connor sighed dramatically. I woke up to her digging through my trash. I've been getting hang-up calls all night too. I think she's fixated on me. With Roxy gone, he trailed off, rubbing his temples. I'm just trying to grieve. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shove my phone in Richard's face and yell, look at the hoodie. But the words tangled in my throat. Nicole's Toyota pulled in next, Jade in the passenger seat. They rushed over, phones already out. Connor texted us, Nicole said, eyes wide with pity. He said you've been stalking him since 3 a.m. Lena, this has to stop. I'm not stalking him. I shouted, instantly regretting how unhinged I sounded. There's blood. In the dumpster. Roxy's hoodie. Jade interrupted softly. I got a text from Roxy's phone this morning. 4 a.m. It said, stop looking for me. Respect my decision. I nearly choked. I'd been watching Connor's window at 4 a.m. He hadn't left. Which meant he had her phone. Show me, I demanded. Jade held up her screen. And sure enough, there it was. Roxy's number. Roxy's name. But the wording was all wrong, too formal. To, not her. Connor jumped in like he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. She used to text like that sometimes. Remember freshman year? After she won that beer pong tournament. He pulled out his phone and scrolled. And there they were, old drunken texts from me. Stuff I'd forgotten about. Confessing how jealous I was of Roxy, how everyone loved her instantly while I struggled to fit in. I'm not saying Lena did anything, Connor added, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. But maybe all this obsession with me is about something else. Nicole reached for my phone. If you have nothing to hide, show us what you've been doing. I held it tighter. No. Jade grabbed my other arm. We're just trying to help. In the struggle, Nicole ripped it from my hand. She scrolled through the photos. Her face hardened. You've been taking pictures of his apartment. His trash. Lena, this is disturbing. I tried to protest, but my voice cracked. Connor shook his head sadly. I threw out old clothes. Now she thinks I planted evidence. I didn't want to bring you guys into this, but I've been documenting her harassment with campus security all week. Richard looked stunned. Wait, you filed reports? Connor nodded solemnly. Screenshots. Photos of her outside my window. I didn't want to escalate it, but now. I lunged for my phone. It slipped from Nicole's hand, crashed against the curb, and the screen shattered into static. The photos, my only proof, gone. Blue and red lights suddenly washed across the lot. Campus security pulled up. The older officer stepped out and looked right at me. Morning, Lena. We've had some complaints. He knew my name. Connor had been preparing for this. He'd filed everything in advance. Officers, Connor said quickly, putting his hands up like he was protecting me. I don't want to press charges. We're just worried about her. She's been fixated since Roxy disappeared. Nicole put her arm around me like I was fragile glass. Jade whispered, we're just trying to help you. And Connor? He stood there, the picture of a grieving friend. Calm. Sad. Concerned. But when his eyes met mine, there was something else. Satisfaction. Because he knew exactly what he was doing. And he knew no one would believe me. When campus security left that morning, I thought maybe I'd hit rock bottom. But I was wrong. Because Connor wasn't just ahead of me, he was miles ahead. Every single move I made, he had already prepared for. That night, the group chat lit up. But not with concern for Roxy. With concern for me. Nicole, we just want you to get help. Richard, you've been acting paranoid for weeks. Jade, Connor doesn't deserve this. None of us do. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. Nothing sounded sane. Nothing sounded like the truth. Because how do you explain blooded hoodies and 3 a.m. pharmacy runs without sounding like a conspiracy theorist? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized Connor had set this up perfectly. He'd filed reports before I'd even suspected him. He'd collected my old messages, my weakest moments. He had turned me into the unstable one in everyone's eyes. And the worst part? It worked. Even my own roommate pulled me aside that night. Look, Lena. Connor called me. He's worried you might be dangerous. I've got midterms. I can't. I just can't deal with drama right now. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. Maybe you could stay somewhere else for a bit. So I packed a bag and left. For 2 nights I slept in my car, too wired to close my eyes. I kept replaying everything over and over, trying to figure out how he'd done it. How he'd flipped the script so fast. And then one night, while parked behind the student union, I remembered something I'd buried years ago. When I was 13, I tried to tell my parents about my uncle. About the way he'd brush too close when nobody else was around. About how he'd whisper things in my ear that made my skin crawl. My dad just shook his head. You're dramatic, Lena. You always twist things. And my mom, my own mom, hugged me tight and said, don't ruin the family over a little misunderstanding. That was the first time I realized some people are untouchable. That no matter what proof you have, if someone looks good enough on the outside, people will choose to believe them over you. And now it was happening again. Except this time, the stakes weren't just me. They were Roxy. I thought I could still salvage something. If the others wouldn't listen, maybe Roxy's parents would. So when they came back to campus to speak with police, I waited until they were alone outside the dining hall. I told them about Connor. About the blood, the hoodie, the thud in the basement. Her mom's face softened, almost like she wanted to believe me. But then she shook her head. Connor's been visiting us every day. Bringing groceries. Checking in. He's been a blessing, Lena. You're just having trouble coping. A blessing. That's what she called him. The man who I knew in my gut had taken their daughter. After that, I stopped trying to convince people. I started trying to catch him. I spent nights following him from a distance. He'd go to class. To parties. To restaurants. Always surrounded by people. Always perfectly normal. But once in a while, I'd see the cracks. A too long pharmacy run. A duffel bag carried to his car at 2 a.m. A glimpse of his hands, still raw, still scratched. I documented everything. Photos. Notes. Timelines. I even broke into his trash again, careful to use gloves this time. That's when I found it, a crumpled receipt from a storage unit on Maple Street. Unit 47. Dated the day after Roxy vanished. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. I finally had something solid. Something I could take to police. But when I rushed home to upload it to my laptop, disaster struck. My laptop screen flickered, then went black. The drive corrupted. All my files, all my photos, gone. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if Connor had somehow found a way to get to me. But I sat there on the floor of my empty dorm room, sobbing like a child, clutching the useless laptop in my arms. The next day, Connor struck again. Nicole posted a photo of him on Instagram. Smiling through tears at Roxy's favorite restaurant, her exact meal sitting in front of him. The caption, supporting each other through grief. And I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even mentioned. Comments poured in from mutual friends. Connor's such a rock. Roxy would be proud of you. Lena needs to stop making this about her. That was the moment I understood I was outnumbered. Outplayed. Outgunned. Connor wasn't just covering up what happened to Roxy. He was erasing me in the process. And if I didn't act soon, there'd be nothing left of me at all. So I made a decision. I was going to break into that storage unit. Even if it killed me. Breaking into a storage unit sounds easier than it is. I sat in my car across from the safe store facility on Maple Street, hands shaking on the steering wheel, staring at that stupid number 47. It was just a metal door, nothing more. But I knew what was inside could change everything. It was almost 2 a.m. when I finally worked up the nerve. I walked across the lot, bolt cutters hidden under my hoodie. Every sound felt like a gunshot, my footsteps on the gravel, the lock snapping in two, the metal door screeching as it rolled upward. The smell hit me first. Bleach. Heavy. Acrid. Inside, stacked neatly against the wall, were bottles of disinfectant, rolls of duct tape, rubber gloves. A rolled-up carpet leaned in the corner, dark stains seeping through the edges. My stomach lurched. I didn't have to unroll it to know what I was looking at. I pulled out the disposable camera I'd bought to avoid digital traces. My hands were trembling as I snapped picture after picture, the flash lighting up that tiny tomb of a room. Finally, I thought. Finally, I have proof. But proof doesn't mean anything when you're already the villain of the story. The next morning, I walked into the police station clutching those developed photos like they were my last lifeline. The officer at the desk barely glanced at them. "Where'd you get these?" I found them in a storage unit. Connor Morrison's storage unit. "Look at the stains, look at the supplies, you can't tell me this isn't suspicious. You broke into a private storage facility." His eyes narrowed. I froze. Yeah, but... That's a felony. By the time he finished his sentence, 2 other officers were already walking toward me. It felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. They cuffed me right there, the photos slipping from my hands onto the tile floor. My voice cracked as I begged them to look closer, begged them to check the unit themselves. But they didn't. Because Connor had already reported the break-in. Security cameras had caught everything, me cutting the lock, me rifling through the unit. In the eyes of the law, I wasn't a concerned friend uncovering evidence. I was a stalker caught red-handed. My court-appointed lawyer laid it out bluntly: you plead guilty to stalking and breaking and entering, you'll get probation and mandatory counseling. Or you fight this in court, and with Connor testifying about months of harassment, you'll go to jail. It's your choice. The storage unit photos were inadmissible anyway, fruit of the poisonous tree. Evidence obtained illegally can't be used. Even if they weren't, a carpet stain and cleaning supplies don't prove murder. So I took the deal. When the judge's gavel came down, it was like Roxy's coffin finally sealed. I'll never forget looking out into the gallery. Connor sat there, head bowed respectfully, playing the victim one last time. Nicole held his hand, tears streaming down her face. The perfect picture of grieving friends united against a dangerous outsider. And me? I was the dangerous outsider. The conviction destroyed everything. My transcript marked with disciplinary leave. My part-time job suspended. My so-called friends cutting me off completely. 2 weeks later, Connor petitioned to be executor of Rox's estate. My conviction for stalking him? It actually strengthened his case. Rox's parents, desperate for closure, signed the papers without question. Her trust fund, the money her grandmother had left her for grad school, now belonged to Connor. And he didn't waste a second. He announced a scholarship fund in her name. A whole campus event in the student center, him at the podium, dabbing fake tears as he talked about honoring her legacy. The administration praised his generosity. Students applauded. Nicole stood beside him, their matching purple bracelets catching the light like some sick inside joke. I watched from across the street, legally barred from even stepping foot inside because of the restraining order Connor had filed. That night, I broke completely. I spread every timeline I'd created across my bed. Notes, receipts, screenshots. I circled dates and drew red arrows, muttering to myself like the conspiracy theorist he'd painted me as. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't. But when I caught my reflection in the cracked laptop screen, hair tangled, eyes hollow, I almost believed it. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was jealous. Maybe I'd invented all of this. Then I saw it again, the photo of Rox's hoodie. Purple fabric shredded, stained dark. I remembered the weight of it in my hands. The smell of dried blood. No. I wasn't crazy. Connor was a murderer. And he'd won. But here's the thing about monsters, once they win, they get comfortable. And that's when they make mistakes. Because Connor might have destroyed me, but he hadn't destroyed the one person he hadn't counted on. Rox's little sister. I thought I was completely alone. But then, 3 months after my conviction, Victoria showed up. Rox's little sister. 17 years old. Same sharp green eyes, same laugh that carried across a room. Only hers had a harder edge, like she already knew the world could hurt you. She'd found Rox's journal, hidden in their childhood bedroom. Page after page of her fears about Connor, his clinginess, his possessiveness, the way he wouldn't take no for an answer. I don't trust him, Victoria whispered to me in a diner booth, fingers trembling around her coffee cup. I think he killed her. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest spark of hope. We started working together in secret. She pulled yearbook photos, messages from Rox's friends back home, even grainy security footage of Connor trailing behind Roxy in the weeks before she vanished. But Connor was always one step ahead. When Victoria skipped school to meet me, Connor showed up at her high school the next day. Concerned about her fixation, he told the counselor. He even offered to pay for therapy out of Rox's scholarship fund. Her parents, broken, exhausted, desperate for peace, forbade her from contacting me. We can't lose another daughter, they said. And just like that, Connor cut off my only ally. I took a job at a greasy diner 40 miles away, the kind of place where nobody knows your name. I saved every tip in a jar, thinking maybe I could hire a private investigator. But with my criminal record, even that dream was a joke. Meanwhile, Connor graduated with honors. He delivered the commencement speech, crying as he dedicated his degree to Roxy. Nicole stood in the crowd, clapping, a purple stone engagement ring glittering on her finger. 2 weeks later, their engagement announcement hit Instagram. The caption read, "We know she's watching over us." I wanted to vomit. But the world ate it up, heart emojis, congratulations, comments about how beautiful it was that grief had brought them together. And me? I was just the cautionary tale. The stalker who couldn't let go. Years passed. Connor moved to Seattle for grad school, Rox's dream city. He became a professor, specializing in psychology. His social media was a highlight reel of beautiful wife, perfect career, charity events. He even gave talks about grief, about how losing a best friend shaped him into the man he was today. But sometimes, quietly tucked between those inspirational posts, I'd see it, another missing student flyer. Always young women. Always described as sweet, trusting, full of life. Most were found safe. Some weren't found at all. And every single time, there was Connor. The helpful professor. The grieving survivor. The one organizing candlelight vigils and speaking eloquently about hope. I started documenting it all again, timelines, photos, news clippings. My apartment filled with boxes, binders, files no one would ever read. Because to the world, I wasn't a whistleblower. I was the crazy girl who ruined her own life chasing shadows. And maybe that's true. Because here's the cruelest irony, Connor was right about one thing. I was jealous of Roxy. Not of her popularity. Not of her charm. But of her belief that people are basically good. That friends would always protect you. That love couldn't hurt you. She held on to that belief until the very end. And it killed her. Now I serve coffee to strangers, watching rain streak the Portland windows. My probation is over, but Connor's restraining order will never expire. I can never confront him. Never warn his next victim. Never even say Roxy's name in his presence. All I can do is watch from a distance. Bear witness. Sometimes at night, I still hear it. That dull, heavy thud from beneath Connor's apartment. The sound of someone, struggling in the dark. Sometimes I dream about Roxy's purple hoodie, torn and blood-soaked in the dumpster, the last truth I ever held in my hands before Connor destroyed me. He won. Completely. And me? I'm just the ghost he left behind. But I'll keep watching. Because someone has to remember the real Roxy. That her favorite color was green, not purple. That she hated pad thai, no matter what Connor orders in her memory. That she was planning to cut him off before she disappeared. Those truths aren't evidence. They won't bring her back. They won't stop him. But in a story built on lies, sometimes small truths are all that's left. And maybe, just maybe, when Connor slips up again, someone else will see what I saw. And maybe this time, they'll believe it before it's too late.